Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today is April 20th in the year of our Lord, 2023. And we're going to discuss on tonight, of course, all things political that are currently going on now in government, whether it's federal, state, or local level. And then we'll go into our main part of the podcast for tonight, which is going to be power sharing part two. We discussed a little bit of it on Monday, and we're going to have a part two of this discussion to bring it to a conclusion, always in hopes of solving. That's what we're about, first and foremost. I'll begin, each broadcast adamantly confessing that, stating that fact. We're looking for solutions here in times of turmoil, conflict, political bickering, just polarization, such partisanship. And so Soluble is here to, bring facts to bear, bring truth to light in order to solve. And that's what we should all be, seeking to do in these turbulent times that we're in. Here in America, we profess to be, a civilized society, a civilized nation. And, oftentimes things that are happening in the country, political bickering, just for one, mass shootings, angry parents confronting school officials, et cetera, et cetera. It sometimes, makes us think, should we beg to differ, or just how much of a civilized society are we? So that's, our goal here, to try to find a political solution. The temperature's really been turned up since the former president left office. And so, just reflecting back to a time before 2016, up to now. But before 2016, we didn't see these kind of political back and forth going on where we're seen to be at each other's throats. We go to our respective corners. We're defending things that the Constitution tells us that we should not be defending, and we're not defending things that the Constitution tells us that we should be defending. And so, our position here at Soluble is that the former president, he really turned the heat up in American society. Challenging our institutions, corruption, siding with foreign dictators, foreign autocrats, et cetera, et cetera. So just kicking off today's political happenings in today's, news. First and foremost, we have the defamation lawsuit that's been settled, out of court between Fox and Dominion. Now, we know that, Fox News is a major contributor to Republican politics. We know that. Now, during the 2020 election, that's all we heard. That was the former president's echo chamber, if you will, trying to establish political corruption or looking for someone to back his claims. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Although the evidence showed otherwise, the president constantly looking for, someone to back his claim of election fraud, ballot box stuffing, cheating to win. And Fox was right there for it. They were right there for it. A willing dance partner going right along with the former president. That Dominion voting machines were rigged. They weren't calibrated correctly. They were tallying votes from dead people. And, just all kind of outrageous and ludicrous things with no evidence to back up these claims. And so, what we've seen in the last couple of days with, Fox willing to settle $780-something odd million. Now, the former president got to be thinking in his mind somewhere that, I really could have used that money. I really could have put that money to a lot better use, or it would have, served a lot better purpose coming to the Trump organization, because he's corrupt like that. But $780-something odd million of a settlement that Fox has settled. And, unfortunately, we don't see them, along with the settlement, come out and make a statement about being wrong, having misled the American people or anything of that nature. So, it's really on Republican voters. It's really on Republican voters and mainly Fox viewers to, take a long look in the mirror and see if is this the side of history that you want to be on. You have Tucker, Sean, Laura, and they're just spouting, they're just backing up all these lies, just stating things that are so much not fact, going on the record without any evidence. It's simply because the president said it. And that's kind of, where the former president put, kind of like the mood of the nation, the temperature of the nation, where, you could just say outlandish and outrageous things. And as long as nobody didn't come out in force to rebuke you or to set you straight, then it's okay. And that's how the president started and ended. And so, Fox wholeheartedly jumped right into it. They were right there, willing to take the bait, hook, line, and sinker, that Dominion was a company with rigged voting machines and et cetera, et cetera. And as I say, we see they settled. So we know that now it should be settled, that the election was fair. The election was not rigged, and there was no amount of corruption that went on during the 2020 presidential election. This is proof. This is solid proof to settle out of court. Otherwise, they would have took it the length of the trial. They would have called on witnesses. They would have used expert testimony and the likes. But none of this happened. So, for all those Republican voters who feel duped, it is somewhat shame on you, because you had to already have known that the former president had a 4-year history there of being a pathological, habitual liar. But yet, you still took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. So now what? Now what? Will Fox News come out now with only truthful facts, no matter how much they want to see Republicans elected to national, statewide offices? I mean, we get it. We get it that, you go all in for your party, for your candidate. But, how far is too far? Are we willing to cheat? Are we willing to go to corrupt measures? How low do we go? And so, going forward, the American people, the American populace in general, we have to take a long look at Republican politicians. And, Republican-backed right-wing news networks like Fox News. Do they have a low? Have they learned their lesson? Will this continue? We have another election coming up. 2024 is right around the corner. So best believe we have another election coming up here. What next? And we have to ask ourselves this. There should still be a question mark there in the minds of the American people, because, as I said, there was no apology. There was no one on behalf of Fox to come out and say, look, we were wrong here. We were wrong. And, let the chips fall where they may. That's a path towards a solution. And we as Americans know that. We know that. I mean, what's wrong with when you're wrong saying you're wrong? And, someone or some news organization or some, right or left leaning political group has a really, character flaw, a character issue there, when they can't say, come out and simply say we were wrong, in order to strengthen belief in the election system that we have in this country. Just a simple statement on the record would have went a long ways in, curbing any future doubt. But we didn't get that. And so, as I said, as voters here in America, if we really want to solve this, if we really want to solve the political climate that we're in, we have to start with the truth. We have to start with the truth, because nothing has ever been solved on a lie. It may have been solved, temporarily, but after months or years, or any prolonged period of time, the truth eventually is going to surface. The truth is eventually going to surface. And so, here we are. Here we are in this moment. And, we here at Soluble are asking our viewers to take a long look at this. Once again, it sounds cliche. It may or may not be a cure all, but we have to show up. We have to show up on election day. We have to show up on election day. But at the end of the day, there's been a conclusion that's been reached. And as I said, here you have a news organization where just 2 to 3 years ago, was adamantly and staunchly defending the former president, and was somewhat his echo chamber that the election was stolen. Now, some 2 to 3 odd years later, they come out and, pay off that claim. And so whether they come out and make a statement or not, whether, Rupert Murdoch or any of his higher ups, whether he sends somebody out or not, whether they come out and make a statement or not, the payoff, the settlement is and should be enough for the American people to realize that, plain and simple, let's put it to rest now. Let's solve it now. Let's plan it and move on. The settlement that Fox News has paid out of court for the defamation suit brought on by Dominion, the settlement payment is proof that the election was not stolen. And so here at Soluble, on this day in April the 20th of the year 2023, we're going to put the issue to rest. Now, the former president, no matter what, because he hates to lose, simply because he hates to lose, this is the extent he will go to. So he will continue to say that the election was stolen. He will continue to say that it was rigged. But, we, the American people, know better. And we should, look towards Republican politicians, party officials, committee chairs, national spokesperson for the Republican Party, or what have you, to come out on the record and condemn the former president. To say that is, a moot point now. Let's put the issue to rest and let's move on as a country. Moving on, we have, sadly, regrettably, we're still dealing with shootings in the country. Now is, people who are knocking on the wrong doors, people who are pulling into the wrong driveways by chance. And, as Americans, and this is not to finger point, this is not to politicize, we're trying to solve here. But the temperature in the country, over the past couple of years has really been turned up. It's really been turned up to the point where we're becoming a less tolerable society. It seems like every day we're losing a bit more of our humanity, our empathy towards others, love for our fellow man. It seems that we're losing it more and more and more each day. More and more each day. But we thank God for the American justice system that hasn't crumbled. It may have cracked a little bit with the former president's false accusations and all kind of attempts to undermine the Department of Justice when he couldn't get it to work for him. When Bill Barr was working for him, it was a great law enforcement organization, and everything was just great about it. But as soon as the Department of Justice wouldn't go his way, back in the president's, false election conspiracy lies was a bridge too far for Bill Barr. And so once that happened, then all of a sudden, in the former president's eyes, the Department of Justice was nothing but, fake news. It was a respected law enforcement organization, but it had become corrupt by the deep state. This is the president's thought. This is the former president's thought, and the former president's words, and what he wants you to think. But the shootings that are happening all across the country, whether it be someone going into a school, someone, just shooting up people on the interstate. Gun violence in America is at an all-time high. It's at an all-time high. And our position here at Soluble is that it's not, a Democrat problem or a Republican problem. It's an American problem, plain and simple. It's an American problem. Now, think of the children first and foremost who are being affected by this. These children we're counting on them to be tomorrow's leaders. We're counting on them to take care of us, in the near future when we've gotten older and maybe too old to care for ourselves. And so, what kind of society are we bringing them up in? One where they have to live in constant fear, have their heads on a swivel when they go out into society. Simply knocking on the door, simply making a wrong turn shouldn't warrant you being shot at. Now, someone might try to say, which is the oldest excuse in the book? I felt threat. How? Just by coming to the door. There's a glass door in between you and the person that's knocking on the door. The person is making no attempt to jerk open or force open the glass door, which is the last remaining barrier between you and unknown person on the porch. So where's the threat at here? How can you feel threatened? Now, if one is yanking on the door, of course, if you're yanking on my door and you're trying to make entrance into my residence without me giving you permission, then that is definitely a threat. No question about it. But we know from the young man who survived, witness statements and statements by the shooter himself that this wasn't the case. It was just, something that he thought, something he felt. And here at Soluble, we're not going to play the race card. We're going to be bigger than that. Although, if race is an issue, if race is a relevant fact in anything that we're discussing, of course, we're going to call it like it is along those racial lines. But, in this particular case here, there was no threat. There was a young man who just happened to be black, just happened to be an African-American knocking on the wrong door. Kids, looking for a party, looking for a social gathering, turned down the wrong driveway. Now, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, we know that, we have two parties here. Well, we have three. But the independent party is not up to par right now with the Democrats and or the Republicans. So most independents, either lean one way or the other based on how they feel about the two candidates or the candidates that, both parties are producing. And so you're sick and tired, so you say. You're sick and tired, so you say. This, domestic carnage that is happening within our borders. There's a way to stop it. There is a way to stop it. What are we going to do? What are we going to do now? The election is right around the corner. You have one party that's pro-gun, and you have another party that's pro-sensible gun. The one that's pro-gun, any gun to do. A six-shooter, a revolver, clip and magazine, semi-automatic, grenade launcher, what have you. Any weapon to do. And they're taking advantage of the Second Amendment. This is not what it was meant to be used for, to shoot each other, to kill, for American citizens to aim their guns at each other. At the time the Second Amendment was drafted, that was in the early stages of America's birth. There were threats all around, both foreign and domestic, from English colonists, English settlers. There were threats all around them at the time that the Second Amendment was thought of, that was drafted into law in this country. Now you fast forward, all these hundreds of years later, we don't have that same threat internally, where we as American citizens feel threats from adversaries, whether they be foreign or domestic. We don't have that. But yet we have this one weapon of mass destruction that's producing a whole lot of carnage and bloodshed. The election is right around the corner. You have to make up your mind as American citizens. One is pro-gun, one party is pro-sensible gun. It shouldn't be, a hard decision to make. There is nothing that's going on within American society, within the American borders, where we as citizens should feel as if, we need this level of firepower. It's not going on to that degree. It's just not. And so, if you're sick and tired, you will rock the vote, in the year 2024. And our goal here at Soluble is to put as many Democratic politicians. If we're looking at this one issue alone, which is gun violence in America, if we were looking at this one issue alone, we will feel compelled to get these numbers out, to get the vote out once again. Get the vote out as if our lives depended on it, because it actually does. We see these shootings happen, across a vast swath. Any given place, malls, churches, synagogues, concert venues, grocery stores. I mean, you name it. And we've had, a mass shooting there at some point in time. And, the politicians come out with the same old. And we should expect, as Democrats, and listen to me good if you're Democratic voters out there, we should expect as Democrats for our leaders to do something about it. That's why we put them in the office. That's what they're there for. That's what they're there for. Now, you're going to hear Republicans talk and speak about the Second Amendment and this, that, and the third. But we have to keep in mind, as Democratic voters, we have the majority. And in this country, the majority rules. Now, could we lose that majority in 2024? If we want to stop gun violence in America, we should add to it. And I'm extending the olive branch right now here at Soluble to, my fellow Republican voters. What is your solution? What do you suggest to end gun violence in America that's killing our young and innocent? Our young and innocent. And, as a civilized society, we should be ashamed of ourselves, really. We should really be ashamed of ourselves if we can't stop it. If we can't do anything about it. We can't, as Americans, continue to, look halfway around the world, look south of the border. We're going to lose our status. We're going to lose our ability, our credibility to point the finger at other nations and say, look what you're doing. And why can't you do better? If we don't get our own act together and keep it together. We're the leader of the free world. We're the most powerful nation on earth right now. And so, other nations are looking to us for guidance. And when they see this on a regular basis, what are they supposed to think? What are they supposed to think? Well, Americans don't even have it together. It's like a war zone in the streets every day. But yet, they're pointing the finger at us. They're thumbing their nose at us, telling us how we need to get it together. That's what they're thinking. That's what they're saying within their own countries, within their own borders, and rightfully so. So if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, gun violence is at an all-time high. It's just a miracle by the grace of God that we as Americans go out and, live our daily lives, whether it's at work, whether it's at play, and are able to make it back home safely in the evening. It's just by the grace of God, because, that's just how short tempered that we have became, how much we have lost respect for humanity and our fellow man in this country. We can and should do better. We can and should do better. Now, as I told you, the former president is still looming large over the Republican Party. Right now, as Democratic voters, we don't want to wait till the last minute to try to figure this out or let it come as a surprise. The former president, Donald Trump, is still the music in the head of a vast majority of Republican voters in this country. And that should be, frightening to the average American who loves freedom and democracy and who wants to see the country, move forward. Who wants to see the country move forward? Moving on from gun violence, and these situations that have happened to these young, Americans. Tragically, one lost their life. The other two are wound up in the hospital. I know one is released. I'm not sure about the young lady who got into the wrong car. But it has to stop. It has to end. And, it's going to be up to us, the American people, to put a fire up under our lawmakers, whether they be Democrat or Republican, to light a fire up under our lawmakers. Guns, guns, and more guns. That's not the way. That's not the way. We have the right to bear arms. And, semi-automatic weapons, really? To what extent do we need that much firepower? The Bloods and Crips are not raiding. The underground kings, the Latin kings. We know these gangs exist, but they're in their territory. They're in their space, and they know that law enforcement is ready to apprehend at any moment. So, we have really nothing to fear there, other than basic handguns, rifles, shotguns, etc. for hunting. What are we doing as a civilized society, to go beyond this? What are we doing as a civilized society that causes us to go beyond what we really need? What is the reason for the fear? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. Moving on, the economy is perking right along. We have to pay close attention to the Feds, the Treasury. What are they saying? What are they doing with interest rates, and why? Of course, prices are up and wages are still stagnant. So, to my fellow Democrats, we can't rest on our laurels. We can't rest on the accomplishments no longer. As I've stated before, the election comes and the election goes, and we win. We put a lot of Democrats in office. Okay, they have a job to do. And, we as American citizens, as American voters, we still have a job to do also. Because sometimes, you have to light a fire. Sometimes you have to poke that Democratic candidate bear to, say, do your job. And if they're not doing it to the extent that we send them to Washington to do it, we have to demand that they do it. Because, at the end of the day, the power is in the hands of the people. The power is in the hands of the people. We have a budget showdown looming. We have a debt ceiling crisis that's fast approaching. Now, if the Republicans have a plan, they need to bring it forward. They need to bring it forward for solution's sake. For solution's sake. And as Democrats, we have to understand that, we're this is a seesaw battle. And especially to the 90-something percentile people of color who are voting Democrat. because we're the ones who have the power to stop the seesaw battle by constantly showing up. Now, the seesaw battle was this. We have 4 years of Republican, 4 years of a Democrat, 8 years of Republican presidency, 8 years of Democratic presidency. Now, right now, the government in this country is reflecting a lean of center left. That's the reflection of the government now. And so we know the temperature's been turned down as far as the chaos. That was the former Trump administration with people acting, people lying, nepotism going on, people, in the White House being privy to classified information and they haven't even passed a security clearance. That was then, this is now. But we're fast approaching 2024, where the tables could turn again. And so, democracy is not, it's not a short game to play. We have to play the long game. We have to play the long game, or we're going to get the short end of the stick. Now, it's fast approaching, as I said, and you have the Republican candidates out here that are running for office. The DeSantis's, the Haleys. I think the former governor of Arkansas, Asa Hutchins, he's running. Tim Scott. Now, this is going to be real interesting. He's put out an exploratory committee. This is going to be real interesting to see how a Negro fares in the Republican Party. What is going to be the argument against him? What is going to be the attack line against him? Now, we've told you, and you've seen it yourself. In my 55 years of life, I haven't seen a so-called minority nowhere on the Republican ticket. Nowhere. I've seen Reagan Bush. I've seen Bush Quayle. I've seen Bush Cheney. I've seen Trump Pence. I've seen Nixon Ford, which when I was a small kid then, I didn't really know anything about politics. But my point is just that. Here's Tim Scott. And we know that, let me back that up as you were. Our position here is soluble. We feel strongly that the Republican Party runs away from so-called minorities like African Americans in droves, and our needs and our wants and our desire to have an equal playing field here in America. Our position at soluble is that the Republican Party runs away from that. So here's Tim Scott. And what we have to keep in mind as voters, as American citizens, to not just to Tim Scott, even though he's going to be an interesting case study in racial politics in the Republican Party, but not just Tim Scott, but all candidates have yet to grow a spine, to come out in a definitive way to say that the former president is not qualified for office. He's unfit for office. He's unfit to serve. And if they would declare that, then all bets would be off for the former president. And just think about how dangerous it is when they don't say it, but yet they want to lead the country. Senator Scott, like I said, he's putting out an exploratory committee. He's traveling around to different states, trying to get a feel, trying to get a pulse. They're asking him about abortion. They're asking him about the economy. They're asking him about Ukraine. And he has an answer for everything. But here's the one troubling thing that we as Americans should understand about all these candidates, as I just said. When they asked the senator if the former president was a nominee, could he support him? He had no answer. Now think about that for a minute. He had an answer for all the other things. Now here's a question about a former president who was a corrupt, pathological liar, constitutional menace, and had no idea of what it took to be president of the United States. Didn't even want to study intelligence reports. Didn't want to come out and denounce Vladimir Putin on the national stage. And so it's something that we have to take a long look at. or we should, because it's a glaring weakness when you are seeking the highest office in the land and you can't speak truth to power about any individual, not just the former president, but any individual that we would deem or that we could plainly see with our own eyes is unfit to serve. So keep that in mind. They can answer all kind of questions, concerning the economy, cancel culture, woke politics. But the one question that they can't answer is, is the president qualified to run again? Should he run? If he's the nominee, would you support him? They can't give a direct answer. But yet they want to lead you and me. They want to lead you and me. But they can't speak truth to power on this insult of an individual who would attempt to seek the presidency of the United States. And those are just a few things that are going on in today's politics. Of course, Russia, Ukraine is still going on. We don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes. We know that it's a war of attrition now, what seems like. Russia has no path to victory, yet they're still there. And, we thank our lucky stars, if you will, that we have a commander-in-chief right now who that we can have confidence in. Is going to do everything he can to prevent Russia from overrunning Ukraine and not take a go-at-it-alone approach. And at the same time, not show Russia that, let Russia see that America is not weak, that we're going to stand with Ukraine and thus and such and thus and such. We're thankful for it. The banking crisis seems to be, not as big as what we thought it was going to be. It's nothing like 2008. At that time we had a Republican president in office. Now we have a Democratic president in office who's assured us that if anything is going to affect the shareholders and not the depositors, and rightfully so. This is the president who is fighting for the working class, who's fighting for middle class America, and that's the way it should be. It's on the shoulders of the shareholders and not the depositors. There it should be. Now, as I said, this is what deregulation looks like, and Republicans are champions of it. But when it backfires, they don't want to own it. They don't want to come out and own it and say, we're going to have to look into stricter regulations. That's not what they're paid to say. But they shouldn't be bought and paid for in that way anyway. They're here to serve us as Americans, not the wealthy, not the 1%. So, we look at this derailment situation in East Palestine. Nothing. Nothing that we heard where the Republicans will come out on the podium and say, we're going to have to take a look at regulations as it relates to the rail industry in the country, the banking crisis. Of course, it wasn't as big as 2008. Some of the other big money spenders come in and bailed them out, loaned them money, to boost them back up, to give them solvency again. Where does this end? Do we really want to solve it? Do we really want to make sure that, trains have the proper braking systems, the proper warning systems in place, the proper paperwork, in order to haul these kind and transport these kind of dangerous chemicals? And as I said, it's all about cost. They want profits up and costs down. We get it. We get it. Anyone who's owning a business should want that, but not when it jeopardizes others, not when it jeopardizes, whole communities and puts their health at risk. That's not the kind of nation that we are, where, you can get rich and never have to pay the cost of the harm that you do to others. That's not the way the country works. And so, as I said, this is what deregulation looks like. We have all the candidates lining up, and we're positioning ourselves for a 2024 presidential run. Let's stay in the loop of what's going on. pushing our policy agenda, letting our Democratic elected officials know what we expect. And, we're going to break it down, line by line, issue by issue, going into the 2024 election to get you to see the contrast, the difference, if you will, in ideology of both political parties. I mean, but, America, we should already see it when it comes to things like one of the major public enemy number ones is going on right now, which is gun violence. We already see it. We already see it. And so, we don't know how many more schools have to get shot up, innocent kids have to be killed for, action to be taken. But there is an election coming up, and as we know, elections have consequences. So, we don't know what's going to happen between then and now. But our position here at Soluble is that it's only, a Democratic administration is going to lower the temperature on gun violence or take concrete steps to do the right thing when it comes to gun violence, to save innocent lives. We're losing our best and brightest here. So those are just, a few of the things that are happening, in American politics today. The president is getting ready to announce whether he's going to run again for a second term. And as Democrats, we need to block out the noise, all the white noise, all the static in the room. As I said, the former president, President Biden, he couldn't go out and enjoy his morning coffee, walk his dog, go for a morning jog or exercise without people coming up and approaching him, begging him to run, pleading with him to run to save the country. So anything that, is out there that's saying that, he's unfit, he's too old, let the president decide and respect his decision. Because one thing we know here at Soluble is that he loves his country. So he's going to do the right thing. President Biden is not the type of man to want to run for president to hold on to power for the sake of power or for what may benefit him by having said power. He's going to put country first. Now, you might hear the, contrary, from the right that, he's protecting Hunter. What about Hunter's laptop and this and that? These are just desperate reaches by a political party that is desperate to try anything. Think about it. Why not the policy issues? Why not his stance on the issues to run against, President Biden? To put where he stands on the issues out there and run against him on that. And here we have Hunter's laptop, a real threat to national security. It's a clear and present danger. And, as voters in America, we have to ask ourselves, how stupid do Republican politicians think that we are? How stupid? And as I said before the election, we put them in power, or if they're put in power by a majority of vote, they're only going to be interested in investigating, not legislating, investigating. And here we are now. Federal Appeals Court had to stop Jim Jordan. He wants to subpoena Alvin Bragg, interfere with something that's going on a state level. And he is working in the federal government level, but yet he wants to interfere with something on the state level. And it's all partisan politics. It's all partisan politics. If the former president is innocent, then, let it play out. You shouldn't have to interfere from a federal level if the former president is innocent. But here it is, the tired same old from Republicans. It's the tired same old. Now, he's ready to investigate Hunter. He's taking this shot in the dark at, going after Alvin Bragg, the DA in New York. Now, when he's asked about, for instance, are you going to set up an investigative committee to investigate Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas for all this undisclosed lavish traveling and how he's been having these donors lavish all this money on him for travel arrangements, buying his properties and letting his mother still live there. Jim Jordan says no. He says no. This is just left wing Republicans, left wing politicians, left wing Democrats going after the judge. They've always had a grudge or axe to grind against Judge Thomas, and you don't against President Biden, and you don't against DA Alvin Bragg. This is not going to cease to exist until we vote it out. Until we vote it out. When we vote it out, then Republicans will be able to sit up and take notice and say, you know what, America's sick and tired of this here. And then they'll be forced to take a different approach. But it's partisan politics at its finest. And this is the best that they can give us out of all the things that are going on in the country. That, we, the everyday American people, need help with. As I said, wages are stagnant and the costs are up. Rents are going up. Property owners are going up by the year, by the month. But nothing from Republican politicians to help us there. It's just, partisan politics at its finest. Investigate here, investigate there. And at the end of the day, it's just a waste of taxpayers' money. Now, we're going to move into our main talking point for tonight here briefly, take another deep dive into power sharing part 2. Now, when we go from all things political to whatever the talking subject is for that particular broadcast, we're mainly aiming at that 90-something plus percentile people of color who are voting in the Democratic Party, because this is the most ostracized group of voters in America, even though you are a large voting bloc. So while you are under attack, are targeted the most, here's your power. Here's where your power lies at in this 90-something percentile plus voting bloc that you have in the Democratic Party. The most powerful is in the country. You don't see Hispanics voting 90% one way. The Jewish coalition. You don't even see Caucasians in America voting 90% solidly one way. So you are the most powerful voting bloc in America. And this is what power sharing means. Now, we briefly told you on the last podcast, we touched on it. The former president, Barack Obama, he came out and his campaign slogan had to do with change. And as we said, Republican politicians, right-leaning Republicans, hardcore alt-right, racist Caucasians in this country looked at that, and regardless of whether it meant change in policy, change in the way we do foreign affairs, changes in the way that we're going to handle the healthcare crisis in the country, changes in the way we're going to approach climate change. They didn't look at none of that. They didn't care about any of that. What they saw, the change that they saw, was a change in the color of skin occupying the Oval Office. So we move forward and he begins to get attacked, that he is illegitimate. His birth certificate is forged or faked. He's not really a natural born citizen here. And along comes former President Trump, who is the main soundbite for these type of things. He's the one pushing this agenda. That is the fake birth certificate and what have you. And he comes along and he runs under a new slogan, "Make America Great Again." Now, to those of us out here in the Democratic Party who are doing power sharing now, we have to look at how these two different slogans are linked. And it explains how we got to where we're at today. Make America Great Again was kind of a shot in the dark against change, which is what his predecessor ran on. Here comes former President Trump to come after Obama and said, no. He's taking America, down a dark hole. So let's make America great again. And we saw what that consisted of. The racism, the biases at the border, separating children from their parents, the Muslim ban. We saw what, his idea of making America great again meant. And so here we are. After these two administrations. Change we can believe in or what have you, and make America great again. And so we're doing power sharing now because we voted out the MAGA movement. After 4 years, we voted it out. And politicians, voters on the right, they understand that. And they don't want to share power. They don't want to share power because for the first time in American history, things are starting to happen where the Negro is governing himself or governing in a joint manner with the rest of America, whether it be Caucasian America, Latino, Hispanic America. We're all governing together. We all have a say in what's going on in the country. We all have a say in how the laws are going to be implemented. And this is something that Republicans don't want. They don't want to see. But it's going to be up to us to understand, the responsibility that we have. We're here now to this 90-something plus percentile who votes in the Democratic Party. We're here now. We're at power sharing. This is what power sharing looks like. And so, this is why the country is somewhat on edge now, because this is not what, Caucasian America is used to. They're used to solely calling the shots on all other individuals in America, so-called minority. They're used to calling the shots, and it's their way of the highway. And that's a thing of the past. That dinosaur has passed. But now, unlike the real dinosaur who is extinct, this dinosaur could come back to life again. This dinosaur could very much come back to life again if we don't hold the line on election day. If we don't hold the line. But we're power sharing now. So, pick up the phone, write a letter, send an email. When those Democratic politicians leave and come back into their districts, it's on us. It's incumbent upon us as constituents of said districts to go out and meet, to voice your concerns, because we're power sharing now. And so to that 90-something percentile, playing the race card would no longer do. It would no longer get it. It's no longer acceptable because we're all power sharing now. We're all power sharing. Now, it's something that you're not used to. As I said, we know the history, of Negroes in the country. Slavery, we beat it. Jim Crow, we beat it. Separate but equal, we beat it. Now, all those things that I just mentioned those were the times where we were under subjugation, where people that didn't like us, that didn't care nothing for us, had power over us. And we beat it. And so now here we are with power sharing. So what are you going to do with it? How are you going to harness your power and use it to your advantage? Because as I said, there's no excuses anymore for Negroes in America to say, that's racism or that's discrimination. And it's, put me in a situation where, I'm fighting an uphill battle just to get what I should be fairly getting in the country. I'm fighting an uphill battle to reap the fruits of my labor because of racism and discrimination. That's over now. That's over. Now, the only way that it's not going to be over is if you don't show up on election day. But right now, you're power sharing. And it's got Republicans terrified. It's got them terrified. They're looking for something. They're fishing. They're reaching. To do what? To take you back down a peg, to turn back the hands of time. To a time where, you didn't have power. Look at the governor of Florida. He's doing everything he can to turn back the hands of time. Book burning. Firing elected officials. Saying what can be taught in the schools and what can't be taught. But yet, If you hear him say it, you know it's all about freedom. The great state of Florida is going to be free. Now, it's not how the citizens of Florida on a whole see it as being free. It's freedom through his eyes. What kind of freedom is that? To burn books, fire elected officials, threaten, you know, clinical workers for exposing real COVID numbers. He's running the state like a tyrant, but at the same time, he's saying that it's a free Florida. 1 and 1 is 2. So let's not forget that. Voter beware. And, you know, as I said, this is something that's new to that 90-something percentile of African American voters who vote Democrat. But it's something that we have to get used to fast. We have to be made aware that this is where we're at. And this is where all the commotion is for. Because America's not used to having to share power. Again, I say, Caucasian America is not used to having to share power. They're used to being in power. And so we're here. It's going to be up to us, you know, how long we remain here, how effective we are while we are here. The Justins of Tennessee are evidence of it. They were expelled, but they had to bring them back because what? The Tennessee State House does not belong to a select few Republicans who are alt-right, who are racist, who cannot stand the thought of Democratic lawmakers, whether they be of whatever race, but they can't stand the thought of Democratic lawmakers having leverage in the people's house. But the Justins of Tennessee, the Justins of Tennessee are a clear reminder of an example of how we share power in this country. And so, you know, we have to be constantly aware of what we have, how sacred it is now. You know, we can look back on the suffering of the past and say that we finally arrived, but there's still work to be done. There's still work to be done. You don't show up at the dance and you know, just be happy and content that you showed up. You know, you want to dance. You know, if you're a young lady, you want some handsome guy to ask you to dance. If you're that handsome guy, you know, you're looking for a dancer with one of the most attractive girls at the dance. So we're here at the dance. And so, you know, we should be looking for a partner in Democratic elected political officials. A partner somewhere there. AOC +3. Hakeem Jeffries. Senator Warnock. You know, we should be looking for someone, whether it be senators or House members, to, you know, light a fire upon them, keep them busy, keep them aware of the fact that we're power sharing now. And this is what we, the people, we, part of the people, that 90-something percentile of Democratic voters, we, the people, we want to be able to have a say from here to eternity. So, you know, with power sharing, trust and believe we're here. Now, you know, look no further than McCurtain County in Oklahoma. You know, they exposed here. You had, you know, some members of the newspaper, some of the reporters there who were head of the newspaper left a device, you know, in the chamber because they felt like county officials or whatever were, you know, holding discussions about city or county affairs in violation of the Sunshine Law. And we saw what we heard, you know, what it's like when Republican politicians, alt-right members of the police force feel like there's no one listening. And so you know definitely that you're power sharing when you hear things like this. You know, if you know I could still, you know, knock one of them upside the head, beat them down any kind of way I want to, and throw them in jail, I'd run for sheriff. That was to the extent the statement that was on the recording. And then you hear another official say, well, you can't do that no more. Boom, boom. There's your proof that you're power sharing. There's your proof. Because on the one hand, you hear the officials say that, if he could do it like it was back in the day, then he would run for sheriff. And we've stated this before on the broadcast. It's not about, well, the criminals have more rights than the cops now. The criminals are putting the handcuffs on the police. That's not the case. And you see it here. This is a stark reminder. What this jailer or sheriff said, or sheriff's deputy, that if they could do it like he used to do it, he would run. But now, since you can't, you got to go by the book now. Most racist Americans don't want to be police officers no more because of this reason. Because they got to do it by the book. And you heard it right there with your own ears. You heard it. Harkening back to a time where, we could hang them up by the neck. They have more rights than we do. That's absurd. Who is they? Who are they? Our position here at Soluble is that we're all Americans. That's what the Constitution has led us to believe. That we're all Americans. That's what the Emancipation Proclamation has led us to believe, that we're all Americans. But here you hear these officials saying they got more rights than us. Boom, once again, evidence of power sharing. We don't have more rights. If he's talking about people of color, we don't have more rights, but now we have equal rights. And this is what power sharing looks like. Now, let this recording that was made unbeknownst to the people who were on the recording, let this recording cement in your mind as fact that we're power sharing right now. Now, like I said, more rights than we do, we know that that's false. We have equal rights. But, in the minds of these racist policemen, these racist county officials, in their mind, because we have equal rights, now we have more rights. And so, we know that's unheard of. We know it's false. So how do we solve it? Because at the end of the day, that's our goal here at Soluble. How do we solve it? I mean, this really could be our last podcast. If we haven't explained it any more better. We're power sharing now. And if you continue to keep skin in the game, so to speak, you don't have to go back. Those times of doing anything, any kind of way, regardless of what the books say, those times are gone. And that's what you heard in the recording from McCurtain County in Oklahoma. That's what you heard. And so, that's where the uproar is. And that's what the uproar is all about now. And, that's why you had so many diehard Trump supporters, because they want to turn back the hand. They don't want to share power. And that's where America's at now. Now, going forward, we're going to have discussions about the LGBTQ community, the entitlements, because we know that those are major sticking points for the people of color who are 90-something plus percentile in the Democratic Party. We know that those are major sticking points. And we're going to break it down for you on those two issues, on those two sticking points, to keep you, in the honest loop of what's going on, and hopefully keep you pushing that lever that says vote for the next Democrat when you go in the voting booth. But we're definitely at a state and time now where we're power sharing. And this is what the major problem is. Republicans want to turn back the hands of time. And that 90-something plus percentile people of color in the Democratic Party, we're pushing forward. We're pushing towards equality, prosperity, no more discrimination in housing, no more discrimination in jobs, no more discrimination in funding of our schools. This is where we're at. And all these things are important. So we're here now. And so what we have to do now is leverage our power. Go on the attack even more now. Don't just be satisfied with the fact that we hold 2/3 of power in the federal government. We have to go even harder now because we're power sharing. Before, we would vote and, we would still feel like, others had power over us, whether it was a Democrat in the White House or a Republican. But we see it now. Let this recording that's come out of McCurtain County, Oklahoma, let this recording be proof. As I said, and you heard it. If they could go back, to a time that once was, then there would be more people running for office, running for sheriff. But now that the playing field is level, they have to go by the book. They have to do the job to serve all the people, not just some people, but they have to serve and protect all people, which is what they were hired to do by tax-paying citizens. Now, all of a sudden, the job is not so appealing now because, you can't go out and find an African-American, male or female, mostly male, and, beat them over the head with a billy club, trump up some charges, and throw them in jail. You can't go out and pull over African-American male, and when he's going to get his license or insurance and registration, you shoot him and say, I thought he was reaching for a gun, and everything is okay, just on your thought perception. Because all those things are gone now. Now, racist Caucasians don't want to have anything to do with the office. And, as I said, their claim is that the criminals have more right than the police, but we know better. It's simply now that cops have to do their job by the book, by the letter of the law, no matter what race of citizenry they're pulling over or they're apprehending or they're attempting to question. We're in a time now where we're encouraging our police officers to de-escalate whenever the opportunity presents itself. As much as possible, de-escalate instead of escalating. So this is all the proof we need for that 90-something percentile people of color. You're power sharing now. You're power sharing. It doesn't sit well with right-wing America, but oh well. And, this is a first for American history. This is a first, going here in the new 21st century. This is a first where we've actually shared power in a way that has teeth to it. We know that there were way back in the days, even in Reconstruction, right after the Civil War there were a few Negroes who held office and thus and such, but it was really no real foothold of power there. It was more like a token type gesture, a diversity hire, if you will. And say, well, we're not racist because we have a black right there in office. Their words, not ours. But those were just token time. Just, times to appease in a way where, any nigger will do, whether he's qualified for the job or not. Fast forward today, we have power sharing with real teeth, with a real substance to it. And so now we must be more responsible than ever. Because with this new shakeup, as you've seen, from the recording in McCurtain County, Oklahoma, it doesn't sit well with a lot of right-wing voters in this country. And the right-wing politicians are not helping it any. You don't see them come out and speak against things like the Great Replacement. You don't see them come out and speak hard on something like that. That Democrats are trying to replace Caucasian America with foreign immigrants and Negroes or so-called minorities. You don't see them come out and attack it. So we have work to do now that we're power sharing. We have the opportunity now more than ever to come out and be that powerful people because we're in powerful positions now. We're shot calling. We have power. We have power in numbers. So, where do we go from here? Besides the ballot box, we go to, wherever the policy is being set to make ourselves aware, to know what's going on, whether it's at the state level or the federal level. Know what the elected officials that you put in office are doing, and be ready to call it out at a moment's notice. Our position here at SARG, based on what we've observed, is that Democratic politicians, they will listen because they know that we the people put them in, and we the people can take them out. So power sharing, that's what we're doing now. From change we can believe in, to make America great again, to now the Biden administration. I'm not sure what his campaign slogan was right now, but best believe. And it's not just that 90-something percentile. All of us, whether we're native born or whether we're immigrants, we have a say in how we're governed. The only office that immigrants can't run for is the highest office in the land, which is the president of the United States. So now that we're power sharing, we realize that we all have a stake in it, and there's enough to go around. Don't let anyone tell you different, that it's going to break the country, to meet this demand. That's long been snuffed out. Before we were power sharing, we couldn't bring up certain issues because we knew they were going to get voted down or talked down. So now that we're here, don't believe the hype that it can't be funded. It's going to add to the deficit. It's going to break the country. Continue to push. Continue to expand this platform of power sharing, and don't believe the hype. There's no time for regression now. We must move forward, and we have every means to do so. We have every means to do so, to move forward in a way that we all share power, and we all have a stake in debating what's best for all Americans. For all Americans. And that's the soluble talking point for today when it comes to power sharing part 2. You're here now. You're here now. So to that 90-something percentile people of color in particular, and to all Democratic voters, you're here now. MAGA is behind us, but it's going to be up to us as the American voters to keep it behind us. If we love democracy, if we love this country and the free, forward-thinking, civilized country that we desire for it to continue to be, we're going to have to vote him out again. We're going to have to vote it out again and again. Is America at its best right now? No, there's still plenty of work to do. There's always something that we can do to make democracy work better. There's always something a little bit more that we can do daily. And our position here at Soluble is that, you should get involved, because finger pointing, the blame game, the race card, those are relics of the past. We all have a say-so now in the political system, in this political environment, climate. We all have a say now. And this is what power sharing looks like. It's going to ruffle a few feathers, as you see happen, as you heard on the recording from McCurtain County, Oklahoma. It's going to ruffle a few feathers. Change is not easily acceptable for some people, especially those people who have had power over so-called minorities and immigrants in this country for years and years and years. This change is going to be very distasteful. It's going to be very unpleasant. But this is the direction that America is moving in. And it's a great direction. It's a righteous direction. It's what the 21st century calls for. Finally, the ideology that left the battlefields of the 1860s, this Confederate ideology, this states' rights ideology, we finally matched it. We finally came up to an equal paring or equal playing field, if you will, where we can push back now more than ever. And push back we must when it's what's best for all Americans, when it's what's best for the American public, especially our school-age children who now fear going to school, dread going to school. Some don't want to go to school. And who can blame them? But power sharing, continuing to get out and vote, continuing to agitate where necessary for positive change, change that affects all of us for the better. Then agitate we must. And that's the conclusion of Power Sharing Part 2 here at Soluble. We thank you for joining us tonight. As always, we welcome feedback. We welcome any input on any given topic that we're discussing. We don't claim to have all the answers, but we are, and I repeat, we are taking that best foot forward approach to solve for the betterment of all of us as Americans and humankind. So that does it for tonight's broadcast. We thank you for joining us. Until the next time, because if it's political turmoil, political chaos, our goal here at Soluble is to try to solve, to make America a better place for not just Republicans, not just Democrats, not just independents, not just at the state level, not just at the federal level, but for all Americans on all levels of government. We here at Soluble strive to bring forth the issues in a way that we can all find a solution and live our lives to the fullest extent of peacefulness and happiness in the country. So until we meet again, this is Soluble signing off, saying thank you, good night, and God bless. Thank you.